Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, it's time goes on. I've had my hip operation now. It's been about 6 weeks, I think. I'm doing okay. I'm getting up and about, walking into town, and not doing too much because it's too easy to do that and then tire yourself out, and then you could be back to square one again. So I've had both my knees done, my left hip done now, and I want my right hip doing next. Hopefully this year sometime, and then hopefully that's finished with going to hospitals again for a long time. Um, yeah, it's because when I was young, I played football, rugby, played cricket, worked in building trades. So you're always on your knees, using your hips. So anyway, I'm on recovery. So I thought I'd just let you know out there. Uh, my guest today is Brett. I think it's Heigenberger.
You got it.
Heigenberger is an award-winning filmmaker with over 25 years of experience in the film and video production. His work spans features films, Light of Mine, Pretty Broken, documentaries, commercials, and music videos with credits on AE Discovery Channel, ABC Australia, and PBS. His career began in Portland, Oregon, leading to work with Fox Universal and Miramax in Los Angeles. Can we please welcome Brett to the show? Hello there.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate you putting me on the show today.
Thank you. You know, how did it all begin for you then? You know, with filmmaking. How did you get into it?
It all starts with the love of movies, and I fell in love with movies at a really, really young age. And my first really big movie experiences were of the paranormal arena, and that would be E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which I
Oh
saw in the
yeah.
movie theater at about 6 years old, and honestly, it was then that I knew that I wanted to make movies, because I had such an emotional response to the storytelling of Steven Spielberg, and I was addicted from there. And shortly thereafter, at the age of like 7, 8, 9 years old, I became kind of infatuated with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then all of his other subsequent films, even his drama films that didn't involve the paranormal. So that's really where it started. And I was lucky enough that my father was kind of in the TV business. And so I had access to TV cameras. Of course, everybody has one in their pocket now, but at that time
Yeah.
in the mid 80s, it was hard to come by to get it. I had to have a VHS camera. You had to walk around with a video recorder. You probably remember those days, Bob.
Yeah, I
And
do. Yeah.
you had a battery that lasted about 20 minutes if you were lucky, and the video quality was terrible, but you could still tell a story with it, and so that's really how it all got started, and I've been doing it ever since.
Brilliant. What got you involved with Bigfoot then?
So again, Bigfoot has been kind of something I've been interested in since I was a little kid growing up in the Pacific Northwest. You couldn't avoid the topic, even back in the 80s, and really at that time it was thought that there was one Bigfoot, and and he lived in the Pacific Northwest. There wasn't this idea that there was a bunch of Bigfoot, or families or clans, and there certainly wasn't this idea that there were Bigfoot anywhere, outside of the West Coast. Obviously, they were discovered or found, or the first kind of main Bigfoot story, if you will, came out of Northern California in the '60s. But I remember watching the Patterson Gimlin film again at very,
Hmm.
very young age, and I was just entranced by this thing, like, and up here in Portland, we're surrounded by trees, surrounded by forests, and so as a child, it captured my wonder, just on long drives to the mountains, or to the Oregon coast, just looking out the passenger window at the trees, wondering if there was something looking back at me. And so, long story short, I began my filmmaking career, and I'd always wanted to do a Bigfoot documentary because it was something that I was so passionate about. And then I met Jill in film school, and her and I shared the same interest and love of the paranormal and of Bigfoot. And fast forward all the way to 2020 when the pandemic hit, we had some feature films and documentaries under our belt, and we had no work. Everything was kind of shut down for the pandemic. And I said to Jill, I
Yeah.
said, let's do the Bigfoot documentary we've been talking about. And that's what started it all. And, we honestly, Bob, thought it was going to be a short, trek, if you will, maybe 3 or 4 months getting, eyewitness interviews and telling the story. And we quickly fell down the rabbit hole, and we haven't stopped falling.
When you talk about Bigfoot, there's so many sightings these days. Wherever you go, there's even sightings in the UK.
Yeah. There's sightings in the UK. I mean, this is a phenomenon that is around the world. Interestingly enough, our YouTube channel, A Flash of Bigfoot, 2 of our top cities on a pretty regular basis are Sydney and Melbourne. We talk to people all the time that are having Yowie sightings down there, and the Yowie sightings and behaviors match Bigfoot. I think the areas that we don't get too many sightings and reports from are probably more Central Europe. But we have had some reports from Russia. We have had some reports from the UK, some reports from Ireland. Of course, they're all over North America, Canada, even northern Mexico. So this is not just the Northwest. This is everywhere. It's all over the place.
When you talk about Bigfoot, what do you think it is really, biologically? What do you think Bigfoot is?
That's the $1 million question, or £1 million question for those of you in the UK. I don't know. It's like sometimes, Bob, I think I know, and then other times I don't know. I mean, my best guess is that there's some sort of advanced biological creature. I don't think that they're a bumbling ape. I don't think that this is some sort of man gorilla, if you will. I believe that these things have probably been here longer than humans have, if that makes sense. A lot of the native individuals and indigenous individuals here in North America say that they are the original human. And I think there could be some truth to that. I think that, like Ron Moorhead believes, I think there might be a case for them being a hybrid alien / human. I don't know. I just know that there is a whole other side of these things that's even more mysterious than just the creature themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. Why do you think people think they may have paranormal powers?
Simply because people have seen things that are frankly unexplainable by today's understanding of science. And we're talking anything from a cloaking ability to footsteps that stop and don't turn around, either whether it's in the dirt or the snow. We've spoken to a number of individuals who've had mind speak and have heard these voices in their head. One of these individuals, Rick Taylor, who is in our second film, A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, talks about how, one of them asked him why he was carrying a gun. And he, this is a scary thing when you're hearing a voice in your head. It's invasive to a certain extent. And it causes a certain amount of trauma to the individual that's having this experience, to the point where they start thinking, well, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I need to see a psychologist. When these things happen to us in this reality that we don't think exists, it can be very challenging to our belief system. So, the evidence for me is very, very strong that these things have paranormal attributes and skills.
Yeah, because when you've seen documentaries, the focus on it, they've got the night vision on it, and they can see it, and all of a sudden it just vanishes, gone.
Yeah,
in seconds.
yeah,
Behind a tree, vanished.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, one of the clips that we've done a lot of work on, I recently did an interview with Joel Hynek, who is a visual effects artist who invented the Predator effect, which is the
Yeah.
famous effect. If the audience hasn't seen it, where the Predator is kind of cloaked in the Predator films. I think there's been 4 or 5 Predator films now, but Joel Hynek actually invented the effect. He was nominated for an Academy Award for it. And so I thought, I'm going to reach out to him because we've got this footage that was taken by Barb Shoup up near Mount Rainier in Washington State of an individual that's obviously cloaked. You can see this thing like jump from a tree and then turn and run away. It's a little harder for some people to see, but to me, it's very apparent. And so, they have this some sort of like invisibility feature about them, which I think is some sort of a biological, Dr. Simeon Hein gets into it a little bit more, but I think it's some sort of a biological optical effect that they're able to do, whether they're manipulating molecules, energy. Again, I don't know how any of this stuff works. I'm not a physicist by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to learn, but I do know what I've seen in the video. And I do know that Joel Hynek, the Academy Award winning visual effects artist and creator of the Predator effect, couldn't explain it. It's something that you could fake, but when you put everything all together, there's no explanation for it other than, something that is cloaked. I'll just put it that way.
How can I say, but when we talk about the government, what do you think it will take the government agencies to have publicly come out and say this species exists? I know in some states you're not allowed to shoot it.
Yeah, that's right. In some states, you're not allowed to shoot it. And I'd like to see more laws passed to protect these things because, in my opinion, and many others, and this really kind of starts with the famous Peter Byrne. We believe that shooting one in the name of science is murder. This isn't something that we need to go out and kill in order to study. That's just wrong. These things are too human-like. They're sentient beings. They're intelligent beings. They have families, from what we can tell. But as far as the government releasing information on them, I'm really hoping that with some of the stuff that's coming out on UFOs and UAPs from the government, I'm hoping that Bigfoot gets slipped in there. And we're going to do our best to try and pressure some of these folks, some of these whistleblowers, and say, hey, what's going on with this Bigfoot thing? Because in my opinion, it's just as important as whatever it is that's flying around in the skies or in the oceans. Because Bigfoot is more of in my opinion, more of a direct connection to our human story. And so that could be why the government is kind of afraid to let these things out. I also believe that there's some probably some pressure from religious institutions because it really kind of disturbs some religions if all of a sudden we have, a 9, 10, 12 foot tall humanoid running around that's able to do these miraculous things. That raises a lot of questions. So, and that's just one side of it. The other side of it too is, you're talking about vast wilderness that you would potentially need to shut down in order to study these things, to try and figure out where they fit. Do they need to be afforded protections as people, as animals, both? So it really causes quite a bit of a mess, if you will, for lack of a better word, for the government to come out and admit that these things are real.
Oh, I'm sure. Do you think Bigfoot are able to communicate with us?
Oh yeah, 100%. There's active communication that's been taking place for hundreds of years. And one of the new movies that we're working on right now, Bob, is called, we don't have a proper title for it, but it's A Flash of Beauty Part 3. And we're just focusing on the indigenous voices. And what we've been told so far, and this is from native folks across the country, is that they've been communicating with Sasquatch for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. And there's rock art, there's petroglyphs that show this. And we just had a conversation with someone just the other day who talks about how Sasquatch would come into some of their ceremonies, whether it's you know, a religious ceremony or whatnot. But there was an active communication between them. There was trading between them, and this is happening now with folks that we've featured, such as Arla Williams. She's had an ongoing, excuse me, communication with them. A number of people across the country are getting these glyphs. You know, our friend Jack likes to call them Wood Latin, which I think is a great name. But you know, folks are able to decode these gifts. You know, they'll find an X, and an X doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean go away. It can have all kinds of different meanings depending on what part of the country you're in. You know, so there's definitely an active communication. There's gifting that occurs between the Bigfoot and a number of individuals. And I find a lot of this communication really quite enlightening and quite charming, to be honest with you. You know, they really, I think they know us better than we know them. I think that's a definite.
Oh, I think that as well. I know like you were saying about the Native American Indians used to exchange gifts. They used to give them something. They used to give them something.
Yeah.
And they've said it's been happening for thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. And, you know, I mean, relations with them and the natives haven't always been, you know, tip top, I guess you can, for lack of a better word. You know, I mean, there's reports even here in Oregon of, you know, the natives would dry out their salmon, almost like drying out clothes on a clothesline. And the Sasquatch would come into the village and just grab them all and take off, you know? So they were mischievous, and they were known by a lot of the Native American tribes as tricksters. And we've seen that. Even myself, I've experienced that, you know, where they'll toss pebbles at you or toss a rock at you, you know, and this happened to Jill and I, you know, a couple of months ago. We were in Alabama talking to a man named Tim Baker, and he had done some calls, and we'd gotten a response. And the next thing we know, a rock, you know, pretty decent rock, thuds and lands right in front of us. You know what I mean? So it was very deliberate. Kind of as if to say, "Hey, I'm right here. I hear you."
Did that frighten you off then?
A little bit. But you know, it's like it didn't. It's not like it was aimed at our heads. It wasn't a nefarious. It was more of a toss to kind of announce their presence. You get the chills, and you start thinking, you know, where's the safest place for me to run if I need to? I mean, certainly, you know, you kind of start becoming defensive minded, but you're also curious at that point. You know, you want to know what's next.
I know there's many a time when you're out in the field, wherever, and you see a UFO, and if you even see a Bigfoot, you're not ready to take a photo of it because you're so in awe, looking at something, thinking, "Oh my God, look at that!"
Yeah. That's right. You bring up a great point, because so many of the folks out there that are kind of new to this realm, whether it's UFOs, Bigfoots, the Loch Ness Monster, you know, they say, "Why don't you get any clear photos? Why aren't there any clear photos?" There's a lot of explanation behind that. And you're exactly right, Bob. A lot of times when you see something like this, and this is true for any number of different forms of wildlife, is, you know, we see something and we see it. And when it's happening, it's beautiful. I mean, it's like, wow, I'm looking at something I may never see again. And there's this hesitance to reach for your phone and fumble with your phone because you're afraid you're going to miss it. You know, I mean, these things move really quick. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a cougar or a bear or a Bigfoot. I mean, they're moving, and they don't really want to be around humans, and I don't blame them.
It's true that, because I think in 2017, we'd been to Bempton, me and Paul, and on way back in his car, we were both talking, and a Black Panther came in the road in front of the car.
Wow.
He's not got a camera in his car. We both got cameras we both got phones in his hands, but we could never, ever get a photo of it because you're looking at something not expecting to see.
Right. It's stunning. That's probably the best word for it. You're stunned, and a million thoughts are going through your mind. Is this thing gonna eat me? Am I safe? You really do go into a protective mode, and and these big cats, like you said, a jaguar or a mountain lion cougar here in the Pacific Northwest, they're bigger than what you expect them to be usually.
Oh, of course they
It's
are. Yeah. Yeah.
it's intimidating, And when you see something, when folks see something that's 10 to 12 feet and it's human based or human like, people a lot of times will make eye contact with these things, and they'll eyes are the windows to the soul. They see something in there. They see a soul. This is why people a lot of times, when they have an opportunity to shoot them, they won't shoot them. And it literally will freeze you in your tracks. And you grapple with that sighting for years afterwards. Some people never recover from it. Some people will never go back to that spot. So they'll never go back to the woods after something like that happens. So
Yeah, that's
taking a
true as
photo is
well.
always a second thought. Yeah.
People get frightened and think, I'm not going back there again. That has frightened me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And other people that just say, right, well, I'm going to start getting more involved. They want to get more involved then. And they want to go back and they want to see something.
well, you need to confirm it, because the mind is kind of a fragile thing, and it keeps rewinding and rewinding and going back and going, did I really see that? Did I really see that? I need to see it again to know that I really saw, to confirm I really saw that. And that's very common with a lot of Bigfoot witnesses.
Why do you think people think UFOs and Bigfoots are connected?
That's a great question. Maybe because of the fact that, Bigfoot and UFOs kind of share some similar paranormal attributes. And I'm wondering, I've always wondered that, is there some sort of a shorthand communication between extraterrestrials and Bigfoot? Could Bigfoot be extraterrestrials to a certain extent? Alien abductees will talk a lot about telepathy, when they're on the craft, or if they've had some sort of a close encounter of the third kind. And these are some of the same things that people talk about with Bigfoot. So I think there's an overlap in how these beings operate. So I don't know if they're like in cahoots, if you will, or if there's just an understanding, or if it's like Chewbacca from Star Wars. I mean, who knows? Maybe George Lucas had that right, but there's definitely a connection. There's undoubtedly a connection. And I have heard stories about people that have kind of come to during an abduction on a ship, and they have seen Bigfoot on the craft at the same time. So there you go. There's your Chewbacca.
With all the sightings and witnesses coming forward, why do you think we still don't have a clear-cut evidence for existence of this creature?
I think a lot of that points back to the fact that these things are paranormal. And I think that it's just their skill set in being able to avoiding capture. And it's not to say that we have photographs. I mean, there are decent photographs out there, and they're the Patterson-Gimlin film has not yet been debunked. I believe that it's authentic. I have seen photographs at Bigfoot conferences that the individual that took them they are unwilling to post them on the internet for a variety of reasons. One is they don't want to give up their spot. Two is that they're afraid of the ridicule. So I've seen remarkably clear photographs. Now I've just completely lost the train of thought of what your question was. I was getting off topic, Bob. What was the question again?
With all those sightings and witnesses coming forward, why do you think they still not have a clear-cut evidence for existence of this creature?
Right. There has been hair samples that have been found that have been tested, and they've been unconclusive. I think that Bigfoot purposely, they bury their bodies I believe they bury their bodies, and they do something else with their bodies to keep them from being found. I mean, this is not an odd thing in the animal kingdom. There's other animals that do this. There's other animals that have graveyards. Elephants do this, of course, and elephants we know are extremely intelligent. There's been mammoth graveyards that have been found. I have personally seen in multiple areas. I have seen 12-foot long, almost by 12-foot deep holes that have been dug in areas where, there hasn't been machinery. It's almost like it was a grave site that was never utilized. So these massive unexplainable holes, and it looked just like something you'd put, a casket into, like a grave site. So I do believe that they bury these themselves. I've talked to a person that found a body, and of course this thing is 600-700 pounds, and he ran back. He was here in Oregon. He ran back to grab somebody to get some help, and when they got back there, it was gone. So I do believe that the government has bodies. There's rumors that when Mount St. Helens erupted, there was bodies that were found. So I do believe that. I do believe that there's definitely some out there. But and I also think that there could be some folks out there that are keeping some evidence close to their chest as far as bones, as far as a skeleton is concerned, and they may be pressured to not release them.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think, I think some people get frightened to think, well, what they're going to say, but I've kept this all this time and never said anything.
Yeah. It's it's interesting, Bob. It's kind of like winning the lottery. It's like winning $500 million, £500 million, whatever, in the lottery, and because you're kind of afraid to. You don't really want people. You want to win it, but you don't really want people to find out, because all of a sudden you've got anybody and everybody coming to get you for money, right? And I think that it's like, oh, I didn't know I had a fourth cousin twice removed. It just
exactly.
And I think that Bigfoot's the same thing. I think it's kind of, yeah, sure, you're lucky if you've got the evidence, but at the same time, I mean, you're talking about a media storm. If you have something that definitively proves the existence of these things, you're going to have media descending from all over the world, because this would be unquestionably one of the biggest stories in human history. It really rewrites history books. It rewrites everything. And we probably end up with more questions than answers, once these things are outed. So, I've asked myself that before, if we're out, if Jill and Mike and I and some of our other friends are out in the woods filming a documentary, and we get crystal clear footage, or we find a body, it's like, what do we do? What's the protocol? It certainly isn't to post a photograph instantly on Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, look what we found. That would be irresponsible. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
There certainly really is as well. When witnesses, what do you think witnesses seem mainly notice most about Bigfoot when they encounter them?
I think that the one common thread that I've heard the entire time is how big they are. And it's not the fact that they're just tall, it's the fact that they're wide at the shoulders, 4 or 5 feet at the shoulders. And I've talked to hundreds of witnesses, and they all kind of say the same thing, how massive and how big this thing is. And, we've all been, whether it's at an airport or a shopping mall or out in the city or something, we've all seen that person that's 7'1", 7'2". It doesn't happen very often. There's really not a lot of tall people in this world. Tall people are above 7 feet are very rare. But when you see that person, that human, you can't stop staring, because it's so out of the ordinary. It attracts your attention. You see them out of the corner of your eye. Well, now imagine something like that, taller by 4 or 5 feet and much, much wider. It certainly elicits a bit of a scare.
It does, yeah. Because I met a guy through Paul who's got a business, is a letter sign writer, and he's
Mhm.
7'2".
Wow.
And
Yeah.
when, I'm quite small, I'm just about 5'1" or 2. And when I
Uh-huh.
looked, I thought, I'm looking at him, I thought, my God, he's big.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now imagine him being covered with
Massive.
hair and even taller and wider.
Oh, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. People forget that. I think people forget this. I think people forget about the scale of these things.
Oh, Mason's here in chat room here. I think he's got a question
Yeah.
here. Hi, Bob. Great special guest tonight, Brett. Do you Bigfoot and similar are aliens?
Yeah, we kind of
Bigfoot.
talked about that a little bit, Mason. But I do think they're similar in a lot of ways. I was just talking earlier about how we have this footage of one that was cloaking, and there was a report. It was actually made worldwide news, and you may be familiar with it. But there was a report that came out of Las Vegas in 2023. I think it was a little around midnight. There was a Hispanic kid named Angel and his family, and they were outside and they were working, and there had been just a few moments prior, there'd been a big flash and streak across the sky, and it was captured on a lot of the Ring doorbell video cameras in the neighborhood in
Yeah.
the area. And all of a sudden he sees aliens in his backyard. That's exactly how he described them. He knew of no other way of describing him. And in his testimony, his report, Angel said that the alien all of a sudden turned blurry, and I immediately knew what he was talking about, and that the alien must have gone into some sort of cloaking mode. And from what I understand, is the aliens know that seeing them can be too much sometimes for us to handle. They're aware of this psychological effect, and so I think that there's this commonality between the Bigfoot and the alien in that they have this sort of cloaking ability. And again, I suggest looking at some of Dr. Simeon Hines' interviews and reading his book Dark Matter Monsters. He kind of gets into some of the quantum mechanics that it would take to cause this blurriness, which could have anything to do with a change in frequency or vibration of the molecules to um, some sort of an optical thing that and we see this in nature to a certain extent with some of these animals that are able to instantly cloak or instantly, like a chameleon or a cuttlefish or something that can change immediately to the color of their environment. I think that that's what we're seeing scientifically speaking, and I think that the aliens have this ability as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they have as well. What does an average work day for you been? Uh, are you get up in the morning? Do you have to have a look and say, right, we're off to so and so today? Or are we going there?
That's yeah. When we're out actually doing some filming, the average workday is it's not all that exciting. I'm either going through footage and doing some editing, or I'm thinking about the next story. Who's the next person we're going to interview? For instance, we have a trip coming up to Colorado this weekend to do a couple of interviews for our Voices in the Wilderness, which documentary, which is about the Sierra Sounds that Ron Moorhead is famous for. We've been
Oh
working
yeah,
on
right.
that for 2.5 years, and we've got an interview with a person in Colorado who's been up to the Sierra camp and has had some experiences. So there's a lot of planning involved that goes into making sure that the schedule is correct, and this is something that Jill and I work with. And then when we're not doing that, I'm editing. I'm taking all of that footage that we've captured on any number of trips that we've taken within the last few weeks and trying to whittle that down and put it into something that's a little bit easier to watch.
When you're going investigating and talking to people, what's some of the best evidence you've heard over the years?
For me, I'm very much an emotional person, if you will. I really key into to people, and I really feel like I've got a good sense of when they're telling the truth or not. And for me, I've spoken to people who've had these interesting once in a lifetime wildlife encounters, and that's more of an excitement. But when I'm looking into the eyes of a person who's seen a Bigfoot and I'm seeing them tear up or I'm seeing their lip quiver, I know they're not talking about seeing a bear or a cougar. I know that they believe 100% that what they saw was a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. And to me, that's really strong evidence. Now, a lot of science-minded people out there would say, well, that's not really evidence because the human mind can play tricks on you. But I feel like after a while, when you've talked to enough people who have the same similarities, you're talking about eyewitnesses that would convict in the court of law. These are the types of people that attorneys will put on the witness stand who have witnessed a murder, who have witnessed something horrible happen, and the jury believes them. They see the tears, they feel the emotions of these individuals, and that's what we're talking about here. That's some of the evidence. Some of the other evidence I've seen elaborate tree structures. I found one myself. I found a small one in the Almoon Wilderness that was clear off away from where a lot of the activity was happening. And you can see it from a ways away. This is something you can see from 50 yards away, and it's unmistakable. You instantly know what you're looking at, and you know that it's just something that you feel. You know that hunters wouldn't have done this, and you know that the wind didn't do this because you're talking about something that's stacked in a TP triangular type form. And it's just obvious. It sticks out like a sore thumb. And so that's one of the pieces of evidence. I've seen footprints. I've heard wood knocks. I've seen their glowing eyes before. I've seen, again, the photographs that people have shown me, and I've got a pretty discernible eye as to when something is hoaxed and when it's not. I can tell pretty quickly if it's a guy in a costume or if it's Photoshop.
Have you had your own sighting yet?
I have not, other than the sight, other than the sighting of the glowing eyes in the Midwest, which I'm convinced were real. I was able to get a photograph, and I could actually see a couple of photographs. I could actually see the almond shape of an eye. I only got one eye, strangely enough. I think the other eye must have been behind a branch or obscured somehow. But I could see it closing. I could see an iris in there. It's pretty clear for what it is, but I didn't see any sort of shape. I didn't see heads. I just saw that, they were probably, I don't know, maybe 200 feet away. And then there was another instance that on a following night where we were bluff charged. We were cutting through some woods, and we heard something get up and stomp off, and you could almost feel the earth shake. But I'm still waiting for my first sighting, Bob. Maybe it'll be in the UK someday.
Well, you never know. You never know when it's going to happen. It might just appear straight in front of you and think, oh my God, what's that?
Yeah. And I'll tell you right now.
I've seen the eyes.
You've seen the eyes?
And that's a bird sanctuary, believe it or not, in open ground, about 300 yards away in 2017. It was a standing joke with me. We used to go to this bench, top of cliffs. My standing joke was, are the eyes on this, Paul? And he'd turn around and go, oh my God, yeah, I can see them. And we didn't have night vision cameras then, unfortunately, or else we'd have probably seen more. And the eyes were there every time we went up. Say it was 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. It was though it was waiting for us to come.
Yeah. They're statuesque. That's part of the way that they avoid being seen, is that these things have the ability to literally just freeze themselves. And there are a lot of people that talk about that, people that return to the same area over and over and over again. And it's obvious because, there'll be a black shape clear off in the woods that wasn't there before and isn't there the next time they show up. But they're unable, these individuals are unable to make out any sort of features other than the fact that this thing is shaped kind of like a human. It has kind of like a humanoid shape, but it never moves. You know, I've talked to many people who have observed these things for hours and hours, but they just kind of freeze.
But when you've got into it now, you know, I think you want to see something yourself now, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I really, really do. I desperately do. And even though I've never seen one, I am 100% convinced they've seen me. 100%.
Oh, yes,
No question.
definitely. And,
Yeah.
and when it does happen, when you will see it, you won't be ready for it.
That's right.
You won't have the
Yeah.
cameras ready, anything, but it won't bother you because you say, at least I've seen it. I know what it looks like.
There's a time, and there's a timing to it too, I think. Tara Harris, who we interviewed, she's a psychic, and she was kind of getting these messages from them that they will show themselves to you when you're ready and when they're ready. And I really truly believe that. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's going to come when it's least expected.
And a lot of people say that about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
People say, why aren't they coming? Why aren't we seeing more? Because exactly, we're not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
And when we are ready, we'll see more.
Yeah, exactly. And it does feel like there is kind of a slow disclosure on their behalf. And I think that there's some orchestration here between governments and of the extraterrestrials, the ETs. And I'm starting to feel like there might be a little bit of that going on with Bigfoot as well, because it seems to me like the activity is going up. The sightings is going up. Some of that might just have to do with the fact that there's just more people out there and the internet's out there. And so you're seeing these things more often than in the past. But the veil, if you will, is thinning. I mean, we're getting more and more acclimated to some of these far off or hard to understand, hard to believe paranormal realms.
Do you think, because they're nearly in every state, do you think they migrate like for winter, or do they go to warmer climates, or it doesn't affect them at all?
Yes, I do. I've been told that before. And I just want to reiterate too, I don't believe that every single Bigfoot out there has these paranormal type skills, and we've more or less been told as much by folks. Some of them have the skills, and you could kind of equate this to like human athletes. We all have the ability to run, but we're not all Olympic athletes. And I think Bigfoot is very much in the same way, in the same vein. But I've been told by many people that, they're just like us, and that they need food, clothing, and shelter. Not clothing, I'm sorry. Food and shelter. Maybe clothing. There have been sightings of them wearing clothes. We can talk about that later. But yeah, they do. They're not really wanting to hang out when, in sub-zero conditions. And you're not going to find a lot of food in those conditions. So there's been many people that have talked about how they'll traverse river systems and stick along a river and make their way from high country down to the lower country in the valleys and whatnot, where, they're basically following their food.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So what's planned for the future for you then? You and Jill, in documentaries wise?
Well, we've got some exciting things coming up, Bob. And we would love more than anything to bring these films over to the UK, in the next year or so. And with that being said, we'd like to go down to Australia as well, but we're working very aggressively on Voices in the Wilderness and Flashy Beauty 3. And the story of Voices in the Wilderness and the Sierra Sounds really, in my opinion, has only been half told. And Ron Moorhead has done such an amazing job of getting those sounds out there and talking about them, and along with Ron, that, there's Scott Nelson and there's Al Berry, rest in peace. And those guys have come out and have told a wonderful job, and nobody has debunked these sounds. But the film that we're working on right now involves the other men that were in that camp, and that's the Johnson family and Bill McDowell. And those men have never spoken publicly about their experiences. And frankly, nobody really knows who they are, yet they were there virtually every step of the way with Ron Moorhead and experienced a
Right.
lot of the same things that Ron Moorhead experienced and recorded. And so those men are sharing their story now. We've interviewed them a couple of times, and what they have to say is astounding. And it really backs up Ron's story. And I believe that it's some of the best evidence in history to suggest that these things are real. I've been to the Sierra Camp myself. I've seen it. I've seen how difficult it is to reach. And I'm 110% on board with these creatures being there and trying to establish some sort of communication with these men over a period of however many years.
Oh yeah, because they've been trapped in huts where they couldn't get out, and being bombarded with rocks, and because you're actually in their territory, really, aren't you?
That's right. That's right. You're in their territory, and and they're going to do things to protect themselves. I mean, any one of us that whether regardless of where we're living, if in the middle of the night we go down to get a cold drink of water and there's somebody standing at our house, we're going to take evasive action. It's like, this is not good. We're gonna take out a baseball bat, a firearm, or call the police. And Bigfoot, they have families, they have children, they have food sources. They're going to protect that. And when it comes down to it, if it's going to be you or them, it's going to be you. And I honestly don't think that they want to kill you to protect their territory. They can, they certainly have the attributes to do that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, because there's so many. Yeah, like you said before, there's so many sightings now. Nearly every week, someone will say, "I've seen that."
Yeah.
Or, "I didn't want to tell you, but I've seen that years ago, but I didn't want ridiculing."
That's right, Bob. That's right. And what we're trying to do with our series with the Flash of Beauty is we want to try and make it comfortable to have this conversation. And this is a frightening conversation to have. And I see this every single day online. There's still people out there that are trolling, and they're ridiculing and making fun of folks who have had these experiences. And that needs to stop. We need to have this conversation now. I feel like we're mature enough as humans to start saying, I've seen something strange I can't explain. Have you seen something strange? And we need to start comparing our notes, because I truly believe that if you're more or less over the age of 20 years old, maybe younger, then you've seen something in your life that you can't explain, whether it's a light in the sky, or it's something in the woods or in the bush, or maybe it was a ghost experience or something. But I guarantee you, almost every single one of us, and that doesn't necessarily mean that these things are paranormal, the things that folks have seen, but we've all seen something that has changed our course of thinking because we couldn't explain it.
It's true, I can be walking into town now, and I'll see a bench. I think I'll sit down there because give me a bit of a rest, and then somebody will sit down, and then by 5 or 10 minutes, I'm asking them if they've seen anything in the sky.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that years ago. I just say, get talking, and they might say, "What are you interested in?" I say, "Oh, I go up to bench and I look at things in the sky." I say, "Have you seen anything?" He said, "Oh yeah, I saw it years ago." I went, "Slow down. Tell me what you've seen in the sky then."
Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, we had a repairman in our home a couple of years ago, repairing our heater, our furnace. And he looks around the house and he says, "What's with all the Bigfoot stuff?" Because we have a lot of Bigfoot decorations. And I said, "Well, we make these movies." And he said, He said, you know, what's really interesting, because my grandfather was the sheriff. He was the local sheriff in town, and he was up hunting, 40 miles away, and he was sitting in his lawn chair, and he had his gun out. You know, he wasn't really working hard. He was just waiting for a deer to come by. But instead of a deer, a Bigfoot came by, and his grandfather was so scared. He grabbed his gun, got in the truck, left his drinks, left his snacks, left his chair in the woods. And he told his grandson, he said, listen, he said, I'm telling you the story once, I'm never going to talk about it again. I don't want to talk about it. You know, and I believe that
that's strange when they say that, isn't it? Where they say,
yeah,
I don't want you to repeat it, or because I might lose my job or whatever. Get frightened. You do get frightened. I suppose you do get frightened if you see something like that.
You do. And you don't want to lose your job. You don't want people making fun of you. You don't want people thinking that you're crazy. But you're not crazy. Talk about it. And it's got to be the right time. It's got to be the right moment. I understand that aspect of it too. But, you know, we also have, in this day and age, believe it or not, there are actually people out there who are counseling folks who have had these traumatic experiences, so they can start working through some of these thoughts, these ideas, these nightmares that they're having about whether it's an abduction, a Bigfoot sighting, a ghost experience. There are people out there that want to help, you know. So I would encourage somebody that's dealing with some of this stuff to seek these folks out and have a conversation with them. They're willing to listen to you.
I know we've talked about Bigfoot. Do you ever dream about it? In your dreams sometimes you think, oh my God, why did I dream that? Is it a certain place I've got to go to next?
I did once. I've briefly had dreams about Bigfoot, but I have had one lucid dream. And this was about 2 weeks prior to a shoot that we were doing out in the Midwest, the same area where we saw, I should say, Mike and Jill and I saw the glowing eyes. And I had this lucid dream that a Bigfoot had come to me, and she said, it was a female, and she said, I am Doha, the city in the Middle East. She said that's what her name was. I am Doha, and I will show you things. And it was one of those kind of experiences where I felt like, again, like there was something evasively in my mind had come into my mind. And incidentally, I asked the individuals that we were with in the Midwest, I said, does the name Doha mean anything to you? And as soon as I said that, they recoiled back and they said, how do you know that name? You shouldn't know that name.
Oh.
So that's been kind of my profound, if you will, paranormal experience with the dreams and stuff. And I haven't had anything like that happen to me since.
Do you think that Bigfoot can read your mind?
Yes. I think they can read your intentions. And I think there's other animals out there that can do the same thing. I mean, you know, humans think that we think we're the end all be all, and we are as far as intelligence goes. But we definitely don't have some of the skills that other animals in the animal kingdom have. And I think like dogs can sense your fear. Dogs can sense when you're nervous. Yeah, other animals can do the same thing. And I think that Bigfoot, they may not be able to completely read your mind. But as Rick Taylor says in our film, they knew that he was carrying a gun, you know, and they may have seen it. You know, I believe that they most definitely have better vision than we do, possibly even night vision, most likely night vision, you know, and, you know, who knows how far, how deep they can get into the human psyche as far as reading our mind. But I do believe that there's got to be some possibilities there. But I do also think that the human mind has got a firewall, if you will, to a certain extent. I do believe that some of our private thoughts can remain private without other entities, you know, reading that.
How long we got? About 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So what's next? Any new projects or new adventures?
Like I was saying earlier, this weekend in Colorado, we'll be doing some filmings in the Rocky Mountains and some interviews. I'm really excited about Flash of Beauty 3 as well. We've gotten some wonderful interviews from some native folks. We had a chance to spend a couple of days in Nanwalek, Alaska, and some of the listeners and viewers out there might be familiar with that city. That's where Alaskan Killer Bigfoot partially took
yeah.
place. And so we visited with a number of the residents there in that village who are part of that show and have had Bigfoot experiences of their own. That's a village where if you haven't seen a Bigfoot, then you're the strange person, not the other way around. So that was really neat to be able to be there and to spend some time with them and talk about.
How did you feel when you went there then, Brett?
Odd. I don't know how else to say it, for lack of a better word. And a little bit on edge, but at the same time, we felt like family. They embraced us and welcomed us in, and they told us numerous stories. But we're, being there, we were constantly looking over our shoulder and listening and, kind of expecting to see and or experience something, which we didn't really. But we were only there for about 24 hours.
Probably enough as well. 24 hours thinking,
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want to be away from here.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting place. There's no roads to or from this area. You have to fly in by plane. And if the weather gets bad, you get stuck there. So, that was a neat experience in and of itself.
I bet it was as well.
Yeah.
It's been interesting talking with you. Have you got any books out or anything?
No books yet. It's something we've been talking about, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we can't include everything in our documentaries. We have experiences before the camera turns on and after the camera turns off. We can't get everything on camera, unfortunately. And so, in the future, I think that there will be a book that will come out that will talk about some of those things.
So, can people watch your documentaries then?
Yes. So the best thing for folks to do is to go into YouTube. Our channel is called A Flash of Bigfoot, at A Flash of Bigfoot. And we have both documentaries on there. You can also find them on Amazon or Tubi. Depends on where you are in the world, but I would suggest for international folks out there that YouTube is the best place to find them. You can find our first film, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, and our second full-length documentary, A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot. Those are both on YouTube, along with bunches of other interviews from folks that were in the movies and not in the movies.
Oh, brilliant. It sounds good, that does, because I'm sure people will be interested in to have a look at that.
Yes. Yeah. And we just put the interviews out there. We want you as the audience to make up your own choices. We just want to be able to give you the testimony and give you the evidence. Sounds
brilliant. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been very good. Rebecca just said lots of interesting stuff tonight, Bob. Thank you, Bob, for some great questions. And somebody else said, it's great having Brett there as well. Somebody else said must have been listened to you, and he's from America. He said, I've listened to Brett before. What a great guy he is.
Oh, well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Just look, be looking for some new stuff coming out later this year. And again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be having some new interviews coming out sometime soon as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, so thank you again for coming on the show. My guest on Friday is Kenny Arish. He's a crypto punkologist. I've had Kenny on before. He's into werewolves and all that business, but cool. A great guy as well. But he plays guitar and everything. He's a punk rocker as well.
I love it. I'll have to meet Kenny one of these days. That sounds great.
Yeah, I'll send you recording at show when I've finished with it.
Please do.
I'll send you a recording tonight, but I'll send you one on Friday when I have Kenny on. I'll send you the recording so you can listen to it.
Yeah, please do. I would
He's a
love to
great
hear
guy
that.
as well. Yeah, genuine nice guy as well.
Excellent.
So thank you very much. You have enjoy the rest of your day. Send me my regards to Jill.
Will do. Will do. You take care, Bob. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.